Well, welcome to this session in our training program, Opening Heaven's Door. And what I want to talk about this particular month is looking at ministry as it takes place in the local church. And to help me in this is Charles Whitehead. Charles is, as well as being a great friend of the mission, he's one of our trustees, actually, and instills such great wisdom to us. As well as that, he has... I'll not get this totally right, but you are the past president of the International Catholic Charismatic Convention?
Renewal Council.
Renewal Council. And so what that says to me, he has had such experience of ministry, and he really does know what he's talking about. What I want to explore, just first of all, is that when people think about healing, often one of their first experiences is when you go to a big conference or something like that. And there's a real emphasis on healing. It takes place in probably some very exuberant worship, excellent teaching, and expectation can be high. And we think, yeah, this really is something. But healing in the local church can be a very different thing. And often you can get back to a church from the conference thinking, well, it's not the same, something's lacking. What is the difference between the big conference and the local church? How does healing relate to both those things?
Well, I think probably the most important thing to realise from the beginning is that the kind of people who go to conferences are not the whole of your local church.
No.
There'll be the sort of, if you want to put it that way, the enthusiasts.
Yes.
Those who want more, very definitely,
yes,
and are not satisfied spiritually by what the local church does. Right. They're very happy with it, it's good, but they want a bit more. So they'll sign up to go to a conference because they know that at the conference the worship will be broader and more exciting probably. If they're more on the modern sort of end of the spectrum, they'll have new songs that they know, that they listen to on CDs and so on, which perhaps aren't played in the local church to any extent. Similarly, a conference will invite speakers in who are noted for their expertise in the topic required. And who are in a sense like professional speakers. In the local church you have the speakers you have who are mainly the clergy, but then with some lay people helping.
Sure.
But they may not have the breadth of experience to speak on every topic with excitement and enthusiasm. So I think you get slightly different people. You get a certain type of person who goes to a conference.
Yes.
Now, when it comes to the local church, you've got a wonderful cross-section. You've got reality, to be honest. The conference isn't really reality. It's a little bit out of reality.
But we think it is.
But we think it is when we go, and we enjoy it.
This is what it's all meant to be like.
This is what it should all be like.
Yes.
But the reality is it's not. It's not all like that. You may have a church that is very alive and is like that, and that's fine. But most churches are catering for a cross-section of people from the very enthusiastic, very passionate, faith alive, into the latest worship, into healing, etc. Want to have really inspirational and challenging talks. So you've got that lot, and then you've got the rest of the parish or church whose aspirations are more modest. They like to come to church, they want to worship the Lord, they like the songs they know, they're not madly excited to have new things because they don't know them. They're used to a level of preaching which isn't too challenging. It is challenging often, but not extremely challenging. And they don't feel that they've got experts all around them, they feel that they're okay. And when it comes to a topic like the healing ministry, the local church may not do very much, and certainly won't have people who are amazingly expert in healing and can talk about it and so on. They probably have some form of healing ministry, but it's rather gentle. So I think you've got a different expectation.
But when you say the local church is actually more real, because that's, in a sense, it
Yeah.
reflects, life in its fullest in the parish.
That's where people are.
Is it, when people go to a healing conference, they might say they've seen healing happen.
Yes.
And they wish they could see that in the local
Yes.
church. Does that mean, in reality, it's... why then do we see it at the big conferences and not in the local church? What's the difference?
Well, I think there are a number of factors. First of all, you probably, at a big conference, you probably invited some one or more people to speak and minister in healing, for whom that is their primary calling.
Yes.
They're
quite good at it.
They're good at it.
Yes.
The Lord has gifted them for this ministry.
Yes.
And so they come to a conference to exercise that gifting.
Yes.
So that there's more potential for healing, because their faith level is higher, their gifting is in that area, and then you have very enthusiastic congregation who are up for this in themselves. So the faith level is high. And then when people ask for healing prayer, they're being ministered to by people who know exactly what they're doing. This is their ministry, their calling. And in the background, you've got people who are believing for this in a very concrete way. And you've probably had rather passionate worship that has raised people's level of expectation.
Isn't that bad news? Either if you're a sick person in a local church and you've no intention of going to a conference, or if you're a prime minister in your local church and you can't get on the conference team.
Yeah.
Does that mean actually you're always going to be operating slightly, in a second-class way?
I think in a sense it does, but I don't think it's bad news, because I think the influence of the conference is positive for the local church.
Right.
As long as the people who have been at the conference are sensitive enough to know that when they turn up next Sunday at their local church, it's not going to be the same.
Yes.
But they come back with a desire to see some growth in the areas of healing and worship and so on. And if they're sensible, I think they can encourage that. I think where the problem comes is if in the local church you have leaders who actually don't want that.
No, that's
then
right.
it's very difficult.
Yes.
And you do sometimes. It's not their thing.
No.
Or they think, well, it was all right in the time of Jesus, but and if you're a saint with a capital S, you probably can do this sort of stuff.
Okay.
But John Smith, who lives next door to me, I don't think he's any good.
No.
Well,
one of the things that strikes me, that if we are a prime minister in a local church setting, one of the things we face in the local church that we probably don't face if you're at a big healing gathering or conference is you tend to see the same people week after week.
You do.
And if you're a prime minister, you probably wouldn't express it, but you might be thinking, oh no,
it's him again.
It's him again. And what do I do this week?
Yes.
And there's a real tension there. You want to keep your faith alive. You want to be saying, yes, he can do it. But you might have been praying for this person every week for the past year or two, and the Lord hasn't done it quite yet.
No.
And you're thinking, what do I say this week? What can we, how do we encourage people in that situation?
What you say is absolutely true. And of course, if you keep praying for the same person who has the faith to keep coming, I mean, that's the crucial bit. This person comes week after week. They are doing it. Yes, they believe that healing happens, and they're coming and they're seeking it. And you're doing your response to that, and you're praying for them. And you're asking the Lord. It's the Lord, after all, who heals them. It's not you.
Yes. And
if you're praying in a good way and with faith and wanting to see this person helped and healed, you can't really do more. Yes. But if you get a bit discouraged and you kind of mechanically say the prayers, then the faith level that you're demonstrating is not very encouraging for the recipient of the prayer, because he or she will soon figure out that actually you're not quite in this morning.
No, and you're not really interested in seeing them.
Not
and
terribly,
you don't have a lot of love for them.
No, because the reason you're praying for them, basically, is because A, you love them,
Yes.
and B, you know that the Lord heals. And you also know that you can't dictate when and how that happens.
So if you are a Prime Minister,
Yeah.
and you see that person coming up, and if you're honest, you're probably thinking, I wish they weren't, but they are.
They are.
You've got to take just a few seconds to remind yourself,
Yes.
why am I doing this?
Yes.
And God loves this person desperately.
Yes.
And it's actually a privilege.
It is.
Yes.
And all I am is a channel
Yes.
for God's love and His grace and His power.
Yes.
Now, you know, if that person comes up and has a physical problem
Yes.
and is seeking healing for this, and nothing happens, they will know, I think, if you've been doing your part with faith and enthusiasm, that God really loves them.
Yes.
And the question, why is this person healed and not that person, is a question we can never answer in the natural.
No.
You know, that's entirely God's affair. And I mean, you've probably, John, you've almost certainly come across people who have gone a long time being prayed for, and then suddenly
So it happens, yes.
something happens.
Yes. And had we not been faithful in that,
you
then it
wouldn't have got to that
I
point. But you might say, well, why have we been doing this for 2 years? Couldn't you have done it in the first week?
Yes.
And of course the answer is God could have.
Yes.
But for some reason, which we don't know, we've gone through this process.
Yes.
And there's probably been blessing in it for
Yes.
us and for the person, and there's been challenge in it.
And one of that sense of privilege of being able to pray for week after week, if they want it, is we are given that opportunity to share God's love, that God is persistent with you.
Yeah.
He's not giving up with you, and if He's not, we won't.
We're not.
So if we can catch that,
Yes.
it's a brilliant thing.
It's a brilliant thing. And the person coming is exercising faith.
Yes.
And to exercise faith week after week
Yes.
is also very good for their growth
Sure.
and their spirituality,
Absolutely.
if also a bit challenging.
Yes. To our prayer ministry in the local church, you know, you were saying that some churches, for whatever reason, may not have a ministry of healing.
Yeah.
And for some, that healing ministry might be limited to one or two key people, or even just the minister. We can all, though, exercise a ministry of healing
Yes.
in the setting where we are.
Right.
How can we do that? What are ways of, supposing I go to a church that doesn't have a full ministry, how can I still exercise a ministry that enables healing to flow to people
Right.
in the local setting?
Well, I think the first thing is people have to know that they could ask you for healing prayer because you're open to that.
Yes.
Now, you may not be able to provide it very formally.
Yes.
You know, that at the end of this service there'll be people to pray for you and so on. That may not be happening because that may not be the place your local church is. But within the congregation, most of us would know that there are a number of people who actually believe in this ministry
Yes.
and would be very happy to pray for me if I asked them.
Yes.
And provided your minister, pastor, priest is not objecting to that, which normally they won't.
No.
They won't. Then I think you can pray for the person who's asked you for prayer.
And that might lead to a more formal ministry.
I think
building up in
it
the
often
church.
does, because you know if this is happening with a few people,
Yes.
whoever's responsible for deciding on these things will say, well, there's actually quite a need here, and it seems that we can to some extent meet it. So let's structure that a little bit.
Yes.
I mean, I can tell you in my own parish, There have been people who have been involved in the healing ministry when they go to conferences and events and so on, and when they're back in the parish, they're available to pray for people, and they've always sort of said this, you know, and that's been great. Well, now our parish priest, and it's a Catholic parish that I'm obviously involved in, has been very happy to offer it slightly more formally at the end of a mass, of a celebration of the mass on a Sunday. So in the little chapel behind the main church, after mass on Sunday, particularly the family mass, which is a 9 o'clock mass for us, there are people every Sunday who will be delighted to pray for anybody who wants to come for prayer. And the interesting thing about that is people come for prayer who never came when you were doing it informally.
Yes. So having it as a formal ministry
they have appreciated it,
yes,
become aware of it perhaps. Maybe they didn't know the people who were doing the praying before.
Yes.
But now they don't have to. They just have to come and say, could you pray for me?
So if you're in a local church and you feel that this is a ministry that you'd love to explore more, you know, talk to your pastor.
Talk to your pastor.
Get his trust and his confidence.
Yes.
And then see what can flow from that.
That's right. And you see, most people, particularly in the UK, who get involved in the healing ministry, they're not striding around shouting and yelling and commanding and doing all this stuff that you sometimes see on TV manifestations of this. Yes. They're mostly just very uncomplicated people who love their fellow parishioners, see them as an integral part of the community, and are delighted to serve them.
Yes.
And if they feel called to pray for healing for people, they're very happy to do that.
Yes.
And it'll be very unthreatening and very uncomplicated.
Yes.
You know, some people have this image of healing, which is like the big TV evangelist types.
And it should all be like that.
Oh, yeah, and it's not, you see.
Thankfully.
Hallelujah. I mean, people do get healed amazingly at those things.
Yes.
But that's not normal.
No. Okay. I want to just explore one more thing about healing in the local church. And you've said that you're a Catholic.
Yes.
And I think it's probably true that Catholics would have a deeper appreciation of the sacraments, probably than many other denominations. Is there a healing element to the sacraments? And how then, if I were sick, what difference would it make in my attitude to, say, receiving communion? How does that work?
Well, I think you would, if you were a Catholic who'd been brought up in the Catholic Church or had become a member and received some teaching and formation, you would understand that the sacraments, by their very nature, are healing.
Right.
It's part of the aim. So you have, if you take the Eucharist, communion, the Catholic teaching is that this is the real presence of Jesus in the bread and wine, but it becomes him present to you.
Yes.
And he is the healer.
Yes.
So if I'm receiving him in communion, if I'm open to him in the celebration of the Eucharist, Jesus is personally present to me as he is to the other people in the church.
Yes.
And so to add my healing need in my prayer is very normal.
Yes.
If you take the sacrament of reconciliation, or confession, as it used to be called, I mean, that's a healing sacrament, because I'm coming, the priest is in a sense a representative of God. He's not forgiving you your sins, God is, but he's articulating it. And I come with some problems and issues and things that have gone wrong, and I recognise I didn't get it right and so on. That has damaged me spiritually, those facts. And so I come and I just go through them with the priest, and normally he won't be commenting on them. He won't be going, oh my goodness, how could you? Or, that's not the way it works. He'll be just receiving what you're saying and offering it to the Lord And then he'll say really encouraging words, because the fact that you have shown up, that you have knelt down in front of him or alongside him or sat on the seat, however it works in your particular setting, and you've been willing to acknowledge your personal failings, is difficult.
Yes.
It's never easy.
But it's a heck of a step of humility.
Oh, it is.
Yes.
It is. Now, the fact that you're willing to do that says, to the priest, but to the Lord, you're sorry about this.
And you're taking it seriously.
Yeah, you're taking it seriously, and you know it was a mistake.
Yes.
Now, there can be kind of aberrations of this, obviously, because nobody's perfect. Yeah. I remember when I'd been away from the church for a while and came back, I went to confession, to the sacrament of reconciliation. And I didn't want to go in my parish because I had quite a long list. And I thought, I'll go somewhere slightly anonymous. So I actually was up in London. I went to Westminster Cathedral. And I had the slight misfortune to encounter a very old priest who was rather deaf. And he was looking very severe. I could see him, it was one of those where you kneel and he's just behind, but you can see him. And he was wearing a very pronounced dog collar. And he had one of those black berettas on his head. And I knew I was in trouble before I started, because he wasn't going to be sympathetic, I didn't think. And he was loving, but because he was deaf, he said, "You did what?"
Oh, wonderful. Everyone's nightmare, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And people waiting in the line could hear this, because I'd been able to hear it when I was in the line, and I had thought of moving to somewhere else, but I'd carried on. Anyway, I got all these comments, you see, and he gave me a little lecture at the end. He was very positive in the sense of, "Thank you for coming, it's great that you've come, and the Lord will really bless you for that," and so on. But when I left, the line was empty. They obviously didn't want their errors broadcast either.
Can I just go back to the Eucharist?
Yeah.
What you were saying flows out of the Catholic teaching of the real presence. Not everyone would subscribe to that, as what they feel happens in communion.
That's absolutely right.
For some, it would be more of the communion is a memorial of what Christ has done. Can we still see a healing element in that?
Absolutely. Because you see, the key question is, does the person who is taking part in the celebration of communion, do they have faith?
Yes.
Now, if they haven't faith, they're not likely to be there, to be honest.
No.
And they believe that Jesus said, "Do this in memory of me," and that's what we're doing. We're here, and it's a memorial thing.
Yes.
But they believe it's really important. This was one of the last things he did before his crucifixion.
Yes.
And he passed this on to his disciples to do. And so there's a real strong faith element.
Yeah.
And now, whether Jesus is physically present in the sacrament, which would be the Catholic position, or whether he's present at the celebration of the communion in a slightly different way, but still he's present, that's the point.
Yes.
So he is there.
Yes.
And if I believe that,
yes.
if I think I'm just doing this because somebody told me I should do it and I don't really think it means anything,
Sure.
I don't think much is going to happen.
You can go and get prayer ministry with that sort of attitude.
Of course you
as
can.
well.
And some people do.
Yes, that's right.
Or the wife's been on at me. So
yeah, that's right. Yes.
But if you really have the faith that this is something very significant, this is something that Jesus instituted shortly before his crucifixion, and he wanted it carried on, it's a special thing.
Yes.
And even if your belief is that he's not present in the sense of the bread and wine physically, but he is present with you at the occasion of this, and he is respecting your faith and your belief in him, there's no reason at all why that can't lead to healing as well.
So what this does, of course, is it opens up the ministry of healing as being a reality in the local church.
That's right.
Even if there isn't a formal
laying on of hands or whatever.
There's hope for us to receive.
There is.
That's wonderful.
And that's very important. And you see, in the Catholic setting, I was mindful last Sunday when I was sitting in Mass, and the priest was sharing a few thoughts about the coming weeks leading up to Christmas. And he said, and on Thursday next week, we will have a Mass of healing. And anybody is welcome, and I would really encourage you to come. So he was celebrating an evening Mass and encouraging people to come, and the focus of that Mass would be healing. So the readings would be chosen accordingly.
Yes.
So there would be, the New Testament readings would be examples of miracles performed by Jesus. His preaching would say that this sacrament is a healing sacrament. And then at the end, people would come forward for personal prayer with the laying on of hands. So the whole focus would be overtly on healing and deliberately.
Yes.
Whereas a normal Mass, the healing element is there, it will be referred to, but it's not the total focus.
But that's it's an amazing healing ministry going on in that focus.
That's right.
Yes.
There is.
In a local church.
Yeah. And a lot of people will come, you see, because people see healing quite broadly.
Yes.
Of course, there's my aches and pains and my problems and my, very serious illness I have, all those things. But there's also, I need healing just of the way I'm thinking, some of my attitudes, my lack of love, my problem with the next door neighbour. I realise I need to kind of come and share that and try and get some help.
And the world of which we are a part.
Absolutely.
It's a broken world.
Yeah, it's a broken world. And I need help sometimes to do that. And, people have issues in their workplace, with people. It's usually with people. Occasionally it might be with the policy of the company.
Yes.
I can't say yes to that. What am I going to do?
Yes.
I really need healing of my pain in this. I have to decide what I'm going to do. Am I going to go along with it or leave? But I'm being hurt by it, and I need healing of that hurt.
Which opens up this whole idea of what healing is.
It does.
Immensely.
It does.
From just being
my backache.
Yes.
Important as that is.
Yes.
And that is a genuine.
Sure.
And that's a thing where you can see if healing has actually occurred usually.
Yes.
Whereas with some of the emotional things, it's harder to see.
Yes.
But the fact that person A has come with that and has the faith to believe that by coming with it, it's going to be better for them. Something's going to happen.
Yes.
And sometimes it's total heal.
It's wonderful. Charles, thank you very much indeed.
My pleasure, John.